My name is Scott Bennett. Back in 2023, I had an emergency heart transplant that saved my life and changed my life. Now I'm having conversations about life that get straight to the heart of it. Well, I've made it 3 years. It's actually 11:03, and I'm going to take just a minute because I've spent the better part of the last 2 weeks with a lot of doctors. I'm blessed to be able to do that. It's one of the reasons I was excited to have this podcast, is just to bring interesting people, because as is my life, I have such amazing friends, and part of it is all about the guests we have. And I got to tell you, it never falls short on me, the wonderful medical professionals that A, I have in my life, but B, that we have in this country. I have to tell you that last week wasn't an ordinary week, because I spent the better part of Thursday at the emergency room and had a blood clot in my arm. But during that day, I thought, and previous to this episode, I knew I wanted, I've had medical professionals on and had my own medical journey. And I feel like I saw every specialty possible in the hospital, every blood test, every scan. But as you might imagine, I did not have an OB-GYN come see me until today, because our next guest is my dear friend, Rick Jacoby. Rick, welcome to Heart of It.
Well, thank you very much, and I appreciate you having me.
And Rick, I have to tell you, because we know each other for a lot of years, I have 2 daughters and you have sons. I'm a brother with 2 sisters, a mom, a wife, and only female dogs my whole life. So I thought I understood females and the complexities of the female body, but I thought, what could be better than 2 men talking about women, women's health, and our journeys in that? So I just, for people who don't know you, a minute or 2 about you, your practice.
Sure. Well, I grew up in LA and never thought about medicine, but somehow ended up in this journey and ended up in Plano, Texas, of all places, after being in coastal communities all my life. And I have a private practice here in Plano over the last 30 years. I've been very blessed to be extremely busy and really have had a lot of enjoyment over the years, and met a lot of wonderful people who are still my patients, and I consider them my family. I moved my wife here about 30 years ago from Florida. She was on the plane crying, as we were leaving her hometown and the beach and the beauty of Florida. But we were fortunate to raise 2 wonderful sons who now are adult men in Plano, and I couldn't be happier. And I couldn't have found a better place to practice medicine.
And it's been a great, I'm from Dallas, as you know, and so Plano wasn't a thing, Dallas went as far north as where I lived, actually. I mean, there was pastures, so it's grown a lot, and you are in a great community. But I just, I've gotten to know you as a friend first, and we play golf, and we built a friendship, and I admire you so much, and we've talked about it. But was being an OB-GYN always the goal for you? I mean...
Oh, no, absolutely not. Like I said, I didn't really study in high school. My parents didn't go to college, so I kind of repeated high school and junior college, and kind of went in a different direction at first. Thought maybe psychology. Didn't know really what I wanted to do. I was always kind of into health and fitness. And then I worked at a camp for kids with cancer called the Ronald McDonald Camp for Good Times in LA. And my mentor became the medical director of the camp, who was also head of pediatric oncology at Children's Hospital in Los Angeles. And so I thought pediatric oncology would be my calling. I really created a bond with these kids and really enjoyed it. And so I went into med school thinking that was going to be, what I did. But
So
anyway,
how did this come to be?
well,
Obviously it's not far, kids and people who have kids, but
Right. Well, as I went through medical school and got into my 3rd year of clinical rotations, my first rotation was actually OBGYN. I trained at Tulane in New Orleans, and we were able to go to Nacogdoches, actually, Louisiana, a little small town, and work at a community hospital there. And as a medical student, I actually functioned really as an intern and got to first assist in C-sections and, really get involved in patient care. So that was my first exposure really to patient care, was OB. And I really enjoyed every minute of it. But then every rotation I started to enjoy. I even enjoyed psychiatry, surgery, family medicine. So it was a tough decision. It wasn't until my 4th year really where I started to break down, all right, really, what do I want to do with my life and my career? And what happened? Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, so you've lived in different communities, you've practiced medicine in different places and experienced so many things. Is it still for you? I mean, obviously you got here. Do you love it as much today as you did when you started? It's certainly changed.
Yeah. Well, it's definitely changed, but yeah, I love it as much as the day I started. I must say, I found my calling, my passion. I still look forward to Mondays. I'm very, very blessed because I really don't consider it work. People always ask, when are you going to retire? And I said, I don't know that I'll ever truly retire, at least for another several years, because I love what I do. And I enjoy my patients and I have grown up together for 30 years now. So it's
And
it's really a great relationship.
and how would you say over that period of time it's changed? I mean, certainly from the day you
Yeah.
got in, what are your biggest epiphanies about medicine, the way you practice medicine, women's health? How has that
Yeah.
changed?
Well, yeah, Scott, you're talking to a gynosaur, I like to call myself, because the male OBGYN will probably be extinct here in the next, 20 years. When I trained, it's maybe 50% of the residents were male, and now it's about 15% or so. So it's becoming a female-dominated industry, which I understand. A lot of women feel more comfortable with women. But I think men give a different perspective as well. So I think that's the biggest change I'm seeing in my profession for sure. Is just the change from male to female physicians. And the other thing is that medicine's changing rapidly with genetics, and now, at 12 or not 8 weeks, actually, we can get the mother's blood and get the baby's DNA from that blood and tell if the baby's at risk for Down syndrome, tell you gender, and so many advances have occurred. So it's just been wonderful to be practicing medicine in this time.
Yeah, it's funny. You talk specifically about like the 4D sonogram, and I know when we were having kids, it was expensive. I imagine all of that with insurance, and of course that's something I do every day is put together health plans. So we see a lot of women's um, focused, point solutions and things that are coming out. I don't know if you know this, but my sister has a special needs child. She's 25 and lives in Plano. And when
Hmm.
she was born, she has a chromosomal deletion. They probably could have detected it, but it wasn't, it was very expensive to do so. They weren't, she's older than me, so they weren't doing that kind of testing. So a lot has changed in the 25 years that my niece has been born to today, what the innovation has played. So I imagine that's a big part of what you
A
do.
big part. Yeah, and another thing I do is I do a lot of genetic testing for inheritable mutations that can increase a woman's risk for ovarian cancer, uterine cancer, the BRCA test, for instance. And
Yeah.
so that's come along over the last 25 years, I'd say. And that's really saved so many numerous lives because if you can find those mutations and do preventative surveillance and preventive surgeries, it makes a huge difference. So that's been amazing as well.
Well, I think you must have been shocked when I said, "Hey, would you be on the podcast?" Two guys talking about women's health, but um, I must admit somebody had reached out to me and said, "Listen, that pays attention to the podcast," and I immediately said, "Absolutely," because I've had my own health journey. But as I mentioned, I live with three females. Well, don't live with them actively, but three females watching my two daughters develop and how differently that was. And I
Right.
think a man's journey with a woman through women's health is very different because I grew up with sisters, so I saw them changing in the household. Whether I was aware or unaware because I was the younger of three,
Right.
and then first getting married and then living with a woman and then seeing that and then having a children. So going through that with the relationship was my relationship with the OB-GYN and those visits as a male supporting the female.
Hmm.
But I think my wife, who has said recently, women were not talking about menopause. And
Hmm.
right now I hear it everywhere I turn. I see when you cut on the morning shows. And I just felt it was important to talk, two men talking about that because you deal in this all the time. I deal in it less regularly in a very
Right.
isolated
Right.
case. But I think it's important that I say for any man listening, and I hope women will appreciate this, like lean in a little bit to understand that because our bodies are so different. So just what's
Yes.
going on now? I have my thoughts, but I would love to hear yours about menopause and just the world's adoption of that.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, in the early 2000s, the World Health Institute came out with a study that showed that hormone replacement therapy was harmful to women, could increase the risk of breast cancer, cardiovascular risk. They stopped the study early, and overnight, 60% of women came off their hormones. They said these are bad.
Right.
Uh, and we look back and realized it was a flawed study. The women were older. The women in the estrogen only arm had less breast cancers, and things have changed now. And we now realize that actually hormones do more benefit than harm in the majority of women. And it's been wonderful because I never really stopped giving hormones to women. After I educate them and empower them with the knowledge, I let them help me make the decision with them. And unbelievable, the change. I had a woman today actually in the office who started hormone replacement therapy 3 months ago, and she came in for a follow up and said, "Thank you. You've changed my life. I feel like myself again." And there's no reason to suffer. And we have modalities now that can really help get them through that transition.
And it occurred to me not too long ago. One day we were fortunate enough to spend some time together, and it was a tough day. And I remember thinking about you the whole weekend. I've admired you a long time. You're always such a wonderful, friendly person, and I knew what you did professionally, and I enjoyed knowing your sons. I had my own relationship with them, but
Uh,
you had I think you told me it was like one of the hardest days. You you know you It's
yeah.
always hard when you have a woman going through these things, but this was about a baby. You didn't really go into
Mhm.
detail, but I could tell that it had really affected you, what had happened, and it just stopped me in my tracks about the number of babies you must have delivered.
Mhm. Right.
But it never ceases to you. Like you said, you wake up excited, but there are hard days on the job. Talk a little bit about your journey through that, because you do get to do days like today where you had somebody say thank you, but on the other
Right.
side, there's some tough things that happen, right? How do you
Yeah.
handle
But that's the interesting thing about GYN, OBGYN, because I'm with women and men and their spouses or significant others during the happiest day of their lives when they're giving birth. I'm also with them sometimes during the darkest day of their lives. I have to explain, an abnormality in a fetus or a miscarriage or, God forbid, a breast cancer I got to tell them about. So it can be very difficult. And deliveries as well. I have probably no hair because of those difficult deliveries.
right?
I think the day we spoke, I had a shoulder dystocia where the head got stuck for like 3 minutes, which seems like an hour. And fortunately, thank God, the baby and everything was okay. But those are things that sometimes are unpredictable and just happen, and it makes you really appreciate those nice, easy, healthy deliveries that you have. Yeah.
Well, I feel like I've been saying this a lot lately, and not so much to you, but I feel like once a week, um, I have a friend maybe because I'm of age and maybe because I know a lot of people, a female who is battling breast cancer. They've done all the things because we have great detection, as you
Right.
know. And my friend yesterday was telling me about her journey and the lonely journey of going for radiation, daily,
Right.
as the journey back. And I have tremendous empathy. And look, men also suffer from breast cancer, much lower incidence, I'm aware,
Right.
but I just feel that I don't want to say it's something in the water. I'm not immune to it. Maybe it's just the number of people I know, but the fact is, um, it's complex and complicated. So I imagine you see a tremendous amount of that. And do you feel that are we knowing more and detecting faster? Is that why it feels so much more? What's behind my experience and maybe your experience with that?
But if you read the literature, 1 in 8 women get breast cancer lifetime is the risk. So it's pretty high risk. So if they live long enough, a good chance they might get breast cancer. I see it more and more. It could be environmental. It's my aging population is part of it as well, I'm sure. I'll tell you another. If you want to hear a real difficult story, I had a lady who was pregnant at 37 weeks and had a breast mass. She showed me at her prenatal appointment. I felt it and said, "Let's get a sonogram." Got a sonogram. It looks suspicious. She was thinking about waiting to do the biopsy till after the delivery, which was scheduled 2 weeks later. I said, no, let's, better get it looked at first. So they got the biopsy. Honest to God, I got the results the day she was being induced in labor that it was positive for breast cancer.
Mm.
And I had to tell her right as the child was being delivered because she couldn't breastfeed because of the breast cancer. And I had to relate that news. It was going to be the highlight of her life. Now, obviously, is
Wow.
changed dramatically. So, stories like that really get you. But, I feel like I'm honored in a position to take care of these ladies. And I feel I do have the ability and empathy to relate this in a sensitive, caring manner. And, I just saw her back 2 months ago, and she's 3 years out now and doing fine.
Yeah.
Thank.
Well, it's funny you mentioned the aging population. I've had two aunts in the last 90 days who have had a
Mm,
lumpectomy, right?
yeah.
I know that's
Hmm.
very common, but again, I'm a male and know my body, so the fact that I'm aware, and I just don't know that often males do, because like I said, many males, the last time they're visiting the OBGYN is maybe when they've been the father of a delivery, right?
Right.
It's a
Correct.
little like, I felt this way a lot I started a fathering program at our school because I think males often don't go to the classroom either. They
Right.
go for an open house, but they don't know how it works. It's not a dominated profession with a lot of males. There's far more
Correct.
female teachers. And so it occurred to me that, and then I realized a lot of the show programming I'm seeing is like women struggling, older women with sex and their relationship with sex, which is,
Hmm.
pervasive in so many shows. But I mean, I feel like in the last 4 days, and then the most interesting thing I saw, which I didn't, again, I knew you were going to be on, was I think 2 days ago or yesterday, the baby that was partially delivered. You probably saw this on the national news,
Hmm.
where for the first time the 31 weeks, the baby was brought out but kept in the fetus. You would know. I'm not the doctor
Yeah.
here.
All right.
And they performed a surgery outside and then put the baby back in the womb to be delivered at term. Is that
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
close?
They have done that, which is just unbelievable. Yeah. The technology these days and what we can do. Yeah.
Does
But
that
they
take a
are.
does that take a I mean, do you have to I imagine those doctors in teaching environments they're continuing to do stuff like that, but are they
Yeah.
highly specialized?
Definitely highly specialized. You're doing that in a university research type facility with very
Right.
high trained, skilled individuals. Yeah, but yeah, like I said, the technology these days and what we're able to treat and cure is blows me away. Even breast cancers these days now are more like chronic diseases for a lot of women. Where 50 years ago you got breast cancer and it felt like a death sentence. Where now women are living 20, 30, 40 years with it, even with metastases, they're able to really get a long life and a good quality of life with the new medications.
To learn more about Dr. Eric Jacoby or his practice, go to personalizedwomenshealthcare.com. So I mentioned briefly like culture, right? So I saw that on the news. I'm watching programming that's talking about sexual issues, both men and women. So I'm going to just talk to you a little bit about that for a second because one of the thoughts I have, and just want your perspective, is that because we live in this society with so much more information, our phones, all the inputs that we take every day, sex has become easier to talk about. Well, just all health issues, right? We have more access to information.
Right.
How much do you think people sort of understanding of their bodies, medicine, and your area of practice plays a role in maybe going to the doctor sooner? Just how is that shifted? Because people are getting information, so maybe the reason I ask is that my wife and I discussed this that she thinks when her mom was coming up, they didn't know all these things. They didn't talk about menopause. They didn't talk about sex. But
Yeah.
now we're talking about it all the time. What's your thought
Yeah.
about that?
No, I absolutely agree. I think social media, the internet, even streaming TV. I mean, it's all over. You can't get away from it. And I meet all my patients dressed in my office before every annual exam, and I can tell you multiple times a day. I mean, one of the number one topics is libido all
Yeah,
day long. My sex drive is down. And I have a lot of information I can share with that because I always say to my patients, being a couple, you're a couple before you're a family, and it's important to keep that relationship and intimacy going. And then a lot of people, you know, watch pornography and think that's the way sex should be, which is
right.
not realistic. They get their information from TikTok and other influencers, and not all of it's, you know, uh, realistic and accurate. So I spend a lot of time educating my patients, explaining the menstrual cycle, fertility windows, their anatomy. I actually had one couple who was trying to conceive, having infertility issues, and believe it or not, he was trying to penetrate the urethra, and I had to get a mirror out and literally show them the
Explain it.
anatomy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Well, how much do you think? So I mentioned I'm a dad of daughters, so I felt that that was and in my own view, I deferred to my wife because she understood the female body better than I did, but I wanted to
Right.
be an active father in the right way for my
Right.
girls. And I think I've done that to respect their privacy as they've developed and changed.
Right.
But I wonder your thoughts about people using media versus, when I grew up, it was about mom and dad talking about the birds and bees. Now we're allowing because we know we can't control the content. How
Right.
much do you think that is an issue? Because it
Yeah.
used to be you had to have that. There were books for that. Now I think people defer. I used to say it was Jewish summer camp for me, but
Right, right, right. Exactly. Yeah, no, we grew up, and I mean, if you want to see a naked lady, you had a Playboy. That was the
right,
only way to get to, see the
right.
anatomy, know what's going on. So, no, I think there's a lot out there now, but I think it's beneficial too. I'm really inspired by this younger generation and the knowledge they have at their fingertips, and then how much they can learn. We had to go to a library, read a textbook. Now you can go on the internet, and there are some very good sites and educational sites. So, I think in the long run, I think it's going to be beneficial. I think people are learning things that they aren't learning in school, unfortunately, and being taught. And I know parents need to be involved, and some are less comfortable than others. So it's important if you have a young daughter to bring her to an obstetrician gynecologist. We don't do a pelvic until they're at least 21, but just to have that conversation, explain the body, and explain the changes they're going through and let them understand that it's normal and what isn't, and so they can get a grasp of what's going on with their bodies.
Well, I mentioned in the introduction, right, that I was in the emergency room, and I'm surrounded by doctors and have amazing medical professionals, and I always thank them, as I will thank you,
Right.
because I have a deep appreciation on my journey. But I will tell you that I did what, I tell people, you can't use Google MD, right, or
Right.
Claude MD or
Right.
ChatGPT MD, but you can ask it things, and it can take you down a path. At least you can begin to you can begin to understand. Maybe I don't think it will ever replace you and your peers across all specialties.
Right.
But I think we're living in a fascinating time in the age of information. So it's a give and take, right? And I think you just have to
Yeah.
people have to be aware that what you said is right. I wholeheartedly will tell people, please visit your doctors.
Well, I can tell you, I don't think there's any substitute, like you said, to having your hands on a patient, looking him in the eye, and getting information. And like I said, all my patients I meet first dressed in my office because they don't want to talk to me when they're cold, uncomfortable, and vulnerable in an exam room. I have tissue in my office, and they say, "Oh, I didn't expect to cry when I came in here."
Right.
And the next thing, they open up, and we're not even talking about a Pap smear in their cervix. We're talking about their home life, their depression, their menopause, whatever it may be.
Right.
And you don't get that same interaction, through social media, on the phone, what have you, as well as virtual visits. The other thing I must say, Scott, is, and the recommendations have now changed as far as how often to get Pap smears in women. They're saying now do them every 5 years. Well, they take that as mean I don't need to see the doctor for 5 years. And I just had a patient, just to give you an anecdotal story, who came in couple of months ago with ovarian cancer because her primary doc said, "Oh, you don't need a PAP for 5 years." So she hadn't seen me for 4 years, and unfortunately, something developed. So I think there's really something to be said to really hands-on approach and that personal interaction.
So one thing that happened last year that I think you might have a perspective on, and it occurred to me the other day in my own experience. I mean, I learn something every time I go to a doctor. Just I talk about access to care, which is what insurance is, and then actual care, which is what you do, right? And there's
Mhm.
a marriage between those two, not always happy anymore. And I think what we saw last year with the United Healthcare CEO, again, I wasn't always in the space, but I chose to get into the space because I felt like there's a way that I could help people. Much like you, I want to help people.
Right.
Everything that I do. Just your thoughts about the payment relationship, because um, they needed to put me on some medication, and the person was doing the right thing, but they were concerned about first, this is the right course of care, but it might not be the most fiscally agreeable for the patient. So
Correct.
they, before making a diagnosis, they said, "What insurance do you have?" So just your thoughts about the world of insurance medicine
Yeah.
over the last 30 years. Like, I just
Yeah.
would be curious.
Well, I think what sums it up is that we're no longer doctors anymore, we're providers. So that kind of groups us with nurse practitioners and other ancillary care people. So the respect is gone for physicians. And I work for the insurance company, like you said. I may want
Yeah,
to,
I mean,
what
the
I want
fact
to
that
do doesn't get covered most of the time, or
well, the fact
half
is,
the
I was
time.
I was talking to somebody that deals in the space today, and everything is a code.
Yeah, it's
you
all about
know,
coding. Thank
right?
God I have a great office manager that's able to keep our doors open because she knows how to code. Because the denials are just crazy.
And all my friends that practice medicine across the various specialties say the same thing. The biggest disruption to a medical practice is when you lose your office team.
Oh,
And right, we know the state of work in the world, and I know all my friends that are doctors are experiencing that. And I imagine that's the same holds true for you at the hospital and in your practice,
oh,
right?
absolutely. Oh, for sure. I'd be lost without my nurse and my office manager, my front office staffs. They're just incredible people. Thank God we have longevity with all of them, and they're like a family to us, and it keeps us, rolling smooth. But yeah, even OB care now, they're changing the codes where it's no longer global. Now we're going to have to bill every visit and everything
Yeah.
separately. So, we got to learn a whole set of codes again and learn how to bill again. And, it's all making it more and more difficult to practice
And you
every
just
day.
want to take care of people, and I sensed that the other day. But
Yeah,
you're trying to satisfy the insurance company, satisfy the patient, and make sure that your time is valued for the reason that you got into it. So,
absolutely.
well, I want to switch and talk a little bit about you, because
Yes.
we've discovered our friendship at different phases of our life, and I knew your boys, and I want to take just a second about your boys. I had more experience with your younger son
Right.
because I got to know him when he was in high school. Have tremendous respect for the young man that he is.
Thank you.
So, we don't get report cards as dads,
Right.
but when other adults experience your kids, and I say that about my own kids, I don't grade my own papers, so it's usually when people meet them that
Right.
they. Uh, did either of your boys ever think about being a doctor?
I don't think ever. Maybe Aiden briefly when he was very, very young, but no, they have more of a business mind, quite honestly, and never seemed to, Carla being a nurse, my wife, and me being a physician, they saw maybe how hard we worked. I'd leave, laparoscopic pictures on the kitchen sink sometimes. They say, please get that out of our faces. They didn't like to hear all the talk all the time. So it's just never something they seemed to really want to get into. But I must say, one of the highlights of my career is when both my sons have watched me do a delivery, which was great.
Awesome. I'm
Yeah,
sure, right? I
yeah,
mean, they really, we all want our kids to, we want to be proud of our kids and we want our kids to be proud of us, which leads me to one of the things I notice about you, that you always ask me about my kids and my family. But I also see you're going to be an amazing grandfather
oh,
because
thank you.
I just know that.
Yeah,
I can see you and Carla being
okay,
that way. But you have such tremendous pride in your boys. I mean, in a very celebratory way for the young men that they become on
right,
their own path and the way that
yeah,
they're going. You've empowered them, and I think we share that about
right,
empowering our kids to go be what they want to be.
exactly.
Uh, do you do you find it interesting? Are you interested in their careers? And you have this path that you've had, but do you learn? I imagine you're probably pretty interested in what they're doing.
Oh, extremely. I mean, it's fascinating. It's really over my head. Aiden, works at McKinsey as a consultant, at 25, and
By the way, I
he's
would have told you when he was 18 he was going to do
oh yeah,
that.
and he's phenomenal at it, and it just blows me away. His ability to communicate and be organized, and just everything about him. He makes me so proud. As does my other son Austin, who's in real estate private equity and spent
Yep.
2 years doing investment banking, and they just have such a work ethic. The two boys that it
Where
just
does that
blows me
come
away.
from? Where does that come from?
I like to think it comes from my wife and I, setting an example because we've both worked hard. But, the other thing we've always done is try to find a balance, and I must say we always had dinner around the table every night during the weekdays when they were kids, had Shabbat every Friday night. So we always kept the family unit together and stayed close that way. And we're still that way, which is great. Yeah.
Yeah, I've admired that in the distance. I got to learn a little more about you from your son, but I developed a friendship with your son, and I had a good fortune when I had, in a previous life and still this life, but starting a business and having young minds around me, I was just impressed by him. He was equal parts, uh, excited about his future at the time that I really knew him best,
Hmm.
but he was way beyond himself in many ways, and that comes from somewhere, and so
Yeah.
I admired that. I know that I mentioned that we share a love for golf, and I've watched you in this recent years. So
Right.
it seems very stereotypical that in the movie that the OB-GYN and my dad actually had a good friend who was an OB-GYN who he played golf with.
Oh, yeah.
Uh, so I feel like I'm living my dream that I get to play golf with you sometimes because they had a very special friendship and
I
for many
appreciate
many
it.
years.
Yeah.
He's
I
still
love it.
alive.
Yeah. Well,
So what's made you fall in love with it?
when we became empty nesters, Carla said, you need to find a hobby. And golf never was even on my radar just because of all the time commitment it takes. And being a busy OBGYN back in the day, I just didn't have the time and didn't want to be away from the family, especially on the weekends. But then I kind of picked it up, over COVID, really. The kids got me some golf clubs for Father's Day. They played a little bit and I became addicted. As you know, it's a very addicting game. And for me, it's kind of my zen. I'm with women all day long. So, it gives me a chance to be with the guys a little bit and talk about other
Yep.
things. Also, being outside is great, and I walk the course, and it's kind of, I'm just focused on one shot at a time. I forget
Yeah.
about everything else going on, and I love the social aspects too. At the club, I've met some really wonderful people, and it's been a great social part of my life as well.
Yeah, early in my life, I think I liked it for that. I mean, I played a little bit in high school, but I've gone through seasons because I played so long of my
Mhm.
relationship with the game. And post heart transplant now, it's
Right.
to spend time with you or my friends that I play with. Sometimes to my dismay, it depends on, but I have said often, um, and I've just finished a book, and there's a lot about golf in my book, just my
Hmm.
relationship with the game, is that in every round I can find something special in the round. You know, it is 18 holes and there are a
Right.
lot of shots, but I have chosen to take away little wins in a single round. And there's something in every single round of golf I've ever played that I haven't done before. Like something.
Right.
And I played a lot of rounds, I've had a hole in one before, so
Wow.
there's things over the course of my career. But it's been a little bit of a joy to see you on your journey. And I have a few friends, somebody I play with regularly. I love watching new people fall in love with the game and kind of live vicariously through them because the frustrations you feel. But at the end of the day, it's golf, right?
It's golf. Yeah, it's not life and death. It's golf, and like I said, I enjoy every aspect of it. And my goal is just not take it too seriously. I'm out there to
Yeah.
have fun and enjoy it, and for what it is. Yeah.
And another thing I admire about you is that you travel a lot. You talk about your traveling, and I see that you go. So just curious, like, have you always loved to travel? I mean, you have more time, right? So
Right.
that's the biggest thing.
That's the biggest thing. Yeah, we always love to travel. When the kids were young, Hawaii was our destination at least once or twice a year. We kind of really have an affinity to
Yeah.
the islands, and for what I do, what's nice is it's like other people have to be with their laptop. They answer emails. They have to take calls when they're on vacation. I can disconnect because there's nothing I can do while I'm gone, which is great. And
Yeah.
so as soon as I get off the plane, wherever I am, I could really take a deep breath and be present and not have to worry about work, which is great. So that's one of the things I really love about travel.
And you just went to South Africa pretty recently, right?
Correct. Yeah, that was kind of a bucket list place to go, and we went with some dear friends, one who's South African, and really got a great experience there. It's really a special place, and then to safari and see the animals and be out in nature was just unbelievable.
What was the coolest animal you saw? Like, what did you think it was going to be, and what was it?
Well, I would say probably the lion, the male lion, walking right in front of us out of the blue, and
Yeah.
like we didn't expect it. Turned a corner, and there he was. Blew me away. And then a baby rhinoceros was a pretty cool thing to see too. With
Well,
the mother.
I've seen pictures of people doing it. Maybe someday I'll do that. I mean, I love animals, but I always wonder what people, because they have these really great, obviously for the tourists that come, they know how to
Yeah,
do it. And
yeah.
depending on your access and what you think it's going to be. And I know you like to eat. So what did you eat over there? That was something that you had never had
Well,
before.
biltong was very good. Biltong is like beef jerky, basically, but it's fresh,
Yeah.
no preservatives. They cut it right in front of you. King clip was a great fish they have out there that was amazing. All the seafood, you can't go wrong. The food is phenomenal. No preservatives, fresh. Everyone's fit there. It's just kind of reminds me of going to L.A. and Santa Monica versus
Yeah.
or Miami. It's kind of a mix of the two.
Were the people, were they, I find, and I don't know what you've traveled, I think more than I have, although I love it. Um, I tell people about travel. For me, it's about people because I think I'm just a people person. So
Right.
the places and spaces you go, but I tend to join, like you said, I tend to make my assessment of a place based on the people I experience.
Hmm. Yeah.
Were the people
Uh,
as friendly?
Unbelievable. They really were some of the friendliest people I've met. Very appreciative of us being there, and just very happy people. And some of these people live in shanty towns and literally get bussed into to work in the restaurants and in the tourist industry, and then get bussed back. But you would never know. They are just the nicest, sweetest, and appreciative people I've
What's next for you? Where are you going next?
next month, actually, Aiden, my younger son's been traveling for 6 months with his girlfriend, and their last stop is Japan. So we're going to meet them in Japan next month, and my older son Austin will turn 30 at the time, so he's going to meet us with his wife. So the six of us are going to tour Japan.
I have some friends here in Dallas that just went, so I will put you in touch.
Please do.
I saw their pictures. They were there for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
They had a child over there studying for the semester, and that's really really popular right now. It sounds like
Right.
you're doing all the good places. So
Yeah.
I think it seems like you're able to balance everything between your desire not to retire, and I hope you don't,
Right.
because everybody that gets you as a doctor is very
Right.
lucky, I
Well,
think.
thank you.
And
Thank you.
then you're able to take enough time to do all these things and be with your kids and
Mhm.
eventually be a grandparent. So I just have to say, I when I thought about two guys talking about women, but also your career and admiration, I knew that this was going to be a fun conversation. I think one that people will appreciate.
Yeah.
Where can people find you? I want to make sure that if they want to come see you or ever have
Oh, yeah,
questions,
sure.
how
Well, I'm in
how do they find
Plano at Personalized Women's Healthcare. I'm off of Midway Road, just adjacent to THR Plano Hospital, just on the south end of Midway. And so you can find me, Eric Jacoby, MD. there.
I hope you don't get a bunch of emails with people saying, but if they do, but I cannot say enough. I know in the past I've said to people when they ask me, I just because as your friend, you I think more than what you know as a doctor is how a doctor knows you, and I think what
Right.
you talk about. I know if I needed an OB-GYN of all the
Right.
specialists I could, you'd be my guy.
Well, I appreciate
So,
it.
but I think I'm good where I'm at. But I know that it's a gift to be able to share you with the people that know about the podcast and are are familiar with it. So thanks, Eric, for joining the conversation
Yeah.
and being part of it.
Well, I really appreciate Scott. I appreciate you. I appreciate our friendship, and I appreciate your lovely family. So I appreciate you having me on. Really.
Thanks, Rick.
All right. Have a great day. Take care.